Hello and welcome to Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There Plus, a weekly live stream and podcast currently focused on Star Wars: The Book of Boba Fett, which is available to watch on Disney Plus. In today's episode, we're going to have a spoiler-filled discussion around Chapter 5, The Return of the Mandalorian, which I guess is kind of a spoiler in itself with that title, but we will carry on and look into that. My name is Keith Isles. I am an independent filmmaker and a lifelong fan of cinema and television. I love films. I love watching them, reading about them, making them, discussing them, and acting in them, all sorts. But I'm not so joined by fellow podcasters, streamers. They run a site called The Comic Crush, and they do various content on that around comic books. They also have a live stream called From Panels to Pictures. So first up, welcome to the stream, Paul Dunn. Hey, Paul.
Hello. How are you doing, Keith? I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, no, good to have you on.
It's lovely to be back on and lovely to see you.
Yeah, we've done some of these things before, but we haven't talked the Book of Boba Fett yet, have we?
Not yet.
I figured it would be interesting to have a look at that. So we're obviously representing the UK here for this one, but we're not alone. We are in fact joined on our quest of this with your partner within the Comic Crush site. She is a writer as well. Am I correct in saying that? I want to introduce her properly.
She has done plenty of really good writing on comic books and comic book movies. That's all worth checking out on our website.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Welcome.
And
Liz C. Jordan. Liz Jordan, hello. How you doing?
I'm great. Happy to see you, Keith.
I've just got to say, I didn't know Liz was going to be on this, and if I had known, I would have declined, Keith. I'm a bit disappointed.
Oh no! Oh, I can't believe you guys have started already.
He misses me so much.
This is actually the first time. This is the first time I've seen either of you since Christmas, I think.
There we go.
That's true. Yeah, we've been on a little hiatus. Yeah. So
yeah.
First pod of 2022.
Indeed. Well, it's great to have you both on. I'm so pleased that you've joined us for this. If you're new to this channel and watching this, then please do consider giving this video a like. You know, it all helps the algorithm, as it were. And consider subscribing to the channel. And if you hit the bell icon as well, you get notified whenever we put new content out. We do all sorts of things on this channel, not just Star Wars and the Book of Boba Fett. If you happen to be watching in the live stream, please, feel free to comment. We've already had one. Graham Williams is saying, I'm wondering what Keith and guests made of Boba Fett free, the Book of Boba Fett episode. Yeah,
we'll find out in the episode.
Definitely get into that. But thank you, Graham, for watching and commenting. If you're finding this video after the fact and you've still got comments or questions, obviously put them down in the section below, and I do try and get back to all comments. But before we get into this particular episode, because I haven't had you on yet and haven't really spoken about this, I'm kind of curious, tonight's episode aside, but the Book of Boba Fett, where you guys are with it so far, what your thoughts are. Have you been on board with it? Has it been a bit of a roller coaster for you? How you feel about it all? And Liz, I want to start with you, because I know you more as a fan of the sort of Marvel and DC superhero type stuff, and I'm not really sure where you sit on Star Wars. So give us a bit of potted history.
Well, I am a big Star Wars fan. I wouldn't say that I'm any kind of expert. Where with like the Marvel and DC and all that stuff, I can go pretty deep. Star Wars is something I watch more casually, without as much sort of, expanded universe knowledge. And, I haven't, sort of read like the Dark Horse comics and, gotten into all that sort of, extensive lore or anything like that.
Right.
I kind of watch it on a surface level. I wouldn't say that, I kind of maybe even, catch as many references as your Paul might. Right. But as far as my enjoyment of it, I've watched, kind of the original trilogy, a bazillion times. I never get sick of those. I've even watched, sort of all the subsequent stuff over and over in terms of the films. Haven't really watched, what I would like to watch, what I would like to expand upon now that it's all on Disney Plus is stuff like the Clone Wars, stuff like Rebels. I've yet to sort of get into that stuff. But it's nice that it continues to grow. And that there continues to be, sort of more and more depth to all the mythology, which I think is what Boba Fett's been doing really well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the episodes so far, before we've got to this one, how have you kind of felt about them?
I think increasing, I think I'm enjoying it more and more with each passing episode. I liked it right from the off, but Boba Fett is a character that when they announced they were doing a Boba Fett film, I was like, not into it. I was like, I don't want to know who he is. I don't want to see, I like that he's mysterious, I think that's part of his allure. So, as a film, I don't, I'm glad they didn't do it as a film. I think that introducing him into a series, gives you more of a chance to, kind of take your time with that character and sort of, now that I've sort of gotten over that idea that, okay, well, I don't really want to see his face. I don't really want to, know what he thinks, beyond, sort of, he's a cool bounty hunter with a great costume and all that stuff. I'm now on board. I'm now totally sold. And I think, the actor that they chose, really like it couldn't be anybody else, particularly with his history, within, the prequels. I'm really enjoying it so far. But, this episode that we're going to talk about, he feels almost entirely separate to all of that.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into, obviously.
We'll get into that for sure. Absolutely. Now, Paul, I know I've been on your show where we've talked about Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked a lot about Star Wars previously. So I know you're into Star Wars. Where are you with Book of Boba Fett?
I am really enjoying it. Minor nitpicks aside, and they are just minor nitpicks. And of course, being a fan of anything, you do have to wake up to that horrible feeling when it's like, oh my God, they're not making it just for me anymore. Ultimately, I couldn't give a toss. I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun each week. It gives me something on a Wednesday to look forward to besides comics. I think that it's been an interesting exploration more than anything of the post sort of Empire world of Star Wars. And I think that stuff is fascinating. Sure. And obviously all of this stuff comes out of the sort of abandoned Star Wars Underworld series. So you see loads of elements of that in there. And I think it's been an interesting exploration of the character. As with Liz, I don't necessarily think you needed. I think one of the reasons why he was so popular is because you didn't really need anything more than you absolutely had in The Empire Strikes Back.
No, I know exactly what you mean.
Did not need all that interconnected stuff in the prequels. I'm not a person that feels the need for every character who's in something to have met every other character. And in fact, I think that sort of stuff does slowly erode the natural kind of feeling to things. Yeah. And Star Wars is quite, weirdly enough, I know it sounds stupid to say this, Star Wars is quite a naturalistic universe.
Yeah.
And I think that all of that has kind of been eroded. However, how much do I really want to get antagonized about that? Not much.
Yeah.
And if I'm enjoying the show, then ultimately it doesn't matter. As with Spider-Man, you remember, I was really upset with the quality of the filmmaking in Spider-Man when we talked about that, which was the last thing we all did together. But ultimately, I enjoyed watching the thing. So who gives a monkeys, really?
No. I know what you mean. I mean, the more we get of something, the more diluted it becomes. That is
there is that
way of things there. The other thing is, I think
comic fans,
but also,
Liz and I know what that's like.
Well, exactly. But also, you say about sort of fan entitlement, if you like, and I think when you're a creative person, particularly if you're a filmmaker or a writer or something like that, that can become even more so, because you sort of think, well, I would have told the story this way, and I would have shot it this way, and I would have made these choices, and it always gets kind of complicated as far as that goes. So
but I think that's both a good and a bad thing, having that sort of, whether or not you want to call it wishful thinking or entitlement, I don't know. I think the entitlement comes when you start demanding it, but I think the wishful fulfillment element is what gets us to want to be in a creative place, right?
Yeah.
So I dare say, Keith, you've made films and acted because you saw certain things when you were a kid and thought, I want to be part of that, or I want to do that, or I can do that better. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm still trying now.
You got people writing fan fiction and very good fan fiction at that. And, I think we've all kind of been doing that throughout our lives.
Yeah.
So, and I dare say that I've gone quite a few, wasted quite a few hours away thinking, oh, how would I have done this? Well, so I think it can drive you.
Yeah.
I think the trouble is now is that you're almost certain that someone will go out and make it for you at some stage. And that I think that's the problem. Some things are better left unmade and undone and never seen.
Yeah.
But hey, not in this lifetime.
No, I got theories about that, which we'll come to. But what I'm trying to do with this show, which also, by the way, goes out as a podcast as well as a video and a live stream, etc., is I'm having different guests on each week simply because I want to get different perspectives and different points of view. I think it makes it more interesting, from a certain point of view, to quote Star Wars. But I have a sort of loose format for the beginning of the show before we dive into the weeds, as it were. And it usually start off just as a sort of recap for people, and just so I'm not doing all the talking, I ask the guests to do a quick recap synopsis of this week's episode. Now, I did suggest you maybe split it between you as the show is in kind of two parts, but whatever you're comfortable with, it can be very brief.
Liz, I'll take this one for the team if you want.
Okay, go on.
Okay, then Paul, you may fire when ready.
So in this episode, The Return of the Mandalorian, which gives away exactly what the episode is, we are back with Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, who is now operating on a sort of space station come giant habitat, a bit like the Halo planet. I don't know if anyone's ever played that video game. And he is still kind of missing Grogu. He is taking down bounties, as always, and getting well paid for it. And he's also got possession of the Darksaber. which becomes a bit of a bone of contention with him and another Mandalorian. I don't remember that Mandalorian's name, but they engage in a duel to see who will become the person who could possibly rule all of Mandalore, which are quite big stakes for this episode. However, our Mandalorian loses. And is kind of forced out of the Mandalorian order because he reveals that he has removed his helmet and shown his face to outsiders, which is a bit of a no-no in the Mandalorian religion. He heads off to Tatooine, back to Tatooine, where he purchases a brand new spaceship, which will seem very familiar to long-time Star Wars fans. And he then sets about repairing that spaceship. That literally is the whole episode.
Yeah.
I like. Sorry, I'm not being more detailed or more kind of effusive about this.
No, that is absolutely perfect.
I like this layout, Keith. I no longer feel like I'm in an episode of Dallas.
All right. You prefer this to the Dallas opening credit layout. Yeah, there you go. I don't know whether it's officially called that, by the way, but you're absolutely right.
But yeah, I mean, that literally is the whole episode. It's actually quite a laid back episode. And of course, what's interesting about it is there is no Boba Fett in it.
Yes, which we'll definitely get to. By the way, the character, the other Mandalorian you couldn't remember the name of, the character is Paz Vizsla, which is actually played by Jon Favreau. So
no, really?
Yeah. So,
but Jon Favreau is tiny. That guy looks.
Well, I know.
Huge.
I think he was just voiced by Jon Favreau. I think I at least that's what I read.
Right,
but I could be wrong. I don't know.
I'm not sure. It's got his name next to the credit, but. Yeah, it might.
I think it might be somebody else in the suit, but I think it's definitely his voice for sure.
It's Jon Favreau on stilts.
The other thing that you mentioned during your recap, now I took this differently. I didn't actually think that he lost that fight. I think he won the fight, but
yes, sorry, you're right.
Yeah, but he then became exiled. For having removed his helmet afterwards. So he got to keep the Darksaber, but until he redeems himself by seeking out the living waters in the mines of Mandalore, which, as far as he knows, don't exist anymore, then he is a Mandalorian no more.
There you go. So you did both share the recap. You see?
Sort of.
It worked perfect. Really, just leave you to it.
The thing is, I instantly forget once I've watched something. Like once I've watched something, it's just like, yeah, that was great. On to the next one, because I'm just making space in the incredibly aging hard drive for whatever's coming next.
Don't go there.
Sorry.
Don't go there. Right. Well, that's a really good point as we talk there now to thank the maker. So just a few brief credits here. Obviously, this episode we've already talked about him was written by Jon Favreau, who's obviously the showrunner for this. This one was actually directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. She directed a couple of the episodes in the seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, some of the standout episodes there. And it looks like, she really is moving further away from being an actor and moving more into directing, because according to her credits, she is about to direct a remake of Flight of the Navigator as a feature. My God. So she's got all sorts of stuff going on. Obviously, yes, this was the return of Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, as played by Pedro Pascal. So it was good to see him back in this episode. And also we had appearances from Emily Swallow returning as the Armorer, Amy Sedaris as Peli Motto on Tatooine, who's obviously been in The Mandalorian before. And we also got the return of poor son Young Lee as Captain Carson Teva, the X-Wing pilot, and he was accompanied there by a new character, Lieutenant Reed, played by Max Lloyd-Jones. What's significant there is Max Lloyd-Jones actually did the body double work for Luke Skywalker. Spoiler, everyone, in the last episode of The Mandalorian. So it's quite nice that they gave him a role where he would actually get recognized outside of that. So yeah, some guest stars, some returning characters. As we've said, the really surprising absence of Boba Fett in the show. He appeared in the title and in the recap, and that was it, wasn't it?
Yeah. And he is credited at the end. Yes. Keith, we keep losing everyone momentarily. Yeah. Sorry, a few technical glitches.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I suspect that's a contractual thing. With his name having to appear in the end credits. But there you go. Right. So before we actually talk about our thoughts and everything on it, as a bit of fun, I do a little section called Bantha Milk Blue, which is basically where we look at references, Easter eggs, connections to other areas of the Star Wars universe, etc. So I don't know. I've put some pictures up just to kind of inspire memory and conversation, really, more than anything. But is there anything any of you guys want to point out in particular? I mean, Liz, you mentioned you're not a Star Wars expert in the way that you are with, say, Marvel or DC, but was there anything in particular in this episode that kind of stood out as being, oh yes, that's a reference to that, or that's an Easter egg, or whatever?
I do so the ship I do recognize as an N1 starfighter, is that right? From Phantom Menace, if I recall correctly. So I got one.
No, that's very good, and obviously I put a picture of that because
the thing down on the bottom, my right there, I recognise as a droid.
Yes, indeed. Well,
it's a robot.
I believe that droid. I'm not really. I'm not into the sort of gaming side of Star Wars, but there is a game called Fallen Order, and I believe that this is the same type of droid as is the sidekick to the character in that show, I believe. So yeah. Any others? I mean, even things that aren't necessarily Star Wars, like, for example, I think you already mentioned it, Paul. We had that, which I thought was really good. We had that new environment that we saw. I've got a picture of that somewhere, I think. But we've got that new environment where it was very much like Elysium or Interstellar or something like that. I think you mentioned Halo, right?
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the Ring World on Halo, although it's much more kind of a cityscape, I guess. And that, in looking at that, that's where you can really kind of see the Star Wars underworld. I don't know if either of you have seen the little short tests that they did for Star Wars Underworld. But it's a fascinating. I think you can find it on YouTube quite easily, and it's definitely worth looking at because it's fascinating to see how much of that feel sort of plays out now in these shows. And the Darksaber there. What's the explosion thing up here, Keith? That's
now is that not the destruction of Mandalore?
Yeah.
Where we kind of finally got some context with Bo-Katan's like reign, sort of and you basically being somewhat responsible for the doom of Mandalore because she hadn't won the Darksaber by their code.
Interestingly enough, they are apparently developing, I don't know how much this is just rumor and how much is true, that they are apparently developing a Bo-Katan series.
Okay.
Which is doing that. It's quite fascinating because I think it's interesting to see how much of this stuff is based in or around or connected to Tatooine, and how much of it is rooted in the Mandalorians.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just become so. Like it's not the Star Wars universe anymore; it's the Mandalorian universe, right? And I don't mean that as a bad thing, but I'm just saying it's fascinating how they've kind of, oh, this was really popular, we're just going to run with this.
Yeah. No, I mean, I have to say it was nice in this episode to see some different environments, because obviously, even though we do again end up on Tatooine, obviously, but you know, it was just nice to see something a bit different. And one of the things, you know, with Bryce Dallas Howard, one of the things I've got to definitely kind of applaud her on is I don't know whether you noticed that continual shot where we're with Din Djarin and he walks around the you know, the spaceport or whatever it's supposed to be, and he gets in the elevator and he goes and meets those other people and all that, and all of that is done in one continuous take, which you know, those things are quite technical to try and pull off like that. So I actually thought it was actually quite well directed, I've got to say.
Although I did see one thing, which was again another like a VFX test, like it was a guy kind of showing off his VFX skills, and they were amazing. Where he did one of those things where someone gets in an elevator, and except the elevator doesn't go in it, like it goes up and it goes down, and all he does is reanimate the environment.
Yeah.
So there is, I mean, you do have to give props. Again, not taking anything away from Bryce Dallas Howard, because I think she's directed all these episodes superbly, to the VFX guys who are really doing a lot of heavy lifting there. And again, not taking anything away from her. I think she's a terrific actress and a terrific director, and I really enjoyed her episode.
No, absolutely. And I mean, that stagecraft technology that they have, you know, in the volume, I mean, that really is, in terms of a creative tool, that does open up a lot of options for filmmakers. So, you know, it looks impressive because what we're actually seeing is actually, you know, there. It's not like, you know, a completely green environment. It's like something that actors, you know, can react to and with. So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Props to the entire team on the sort of quality of this production. But yeah, that battlefield, you're absolutely right, Liz. It's from the Night of 1,000 Tears, which was the attack on Mandalore. One of the things I loved about this is, and this is kind of Keith memory lane stuff, but when I was a kid, my parents couldn't afford to necessarily get me the vehicles for the 3 3/4 inch Star Wars figures. So I sometimes got some of the smaller scale die cast vehicles, and the TIE Bomber was the one that I really wanted but didn't get, because it was hard to get hold of that one. And it was quite cool to see the TIE Bomber over there. And then, of course, we saw a lot of the we saw the probe droids, and we saw the KX droids, which are the same type as K2SO from
Rogue One.
Rogue One. So and very, very reminiscent of the beginning of Terminator 2. I felt
extremely, yeah.
So yeah, that was good. The other things we've already mentioned, the Rebel pilot, which I've got there, who came back, and obviously Peli Motto, who's there in the picture as well.
Is that R5D4 there?
Yes, R5D4 was seen, you know, had previously been with Peli Motto and the other droids, the Treadwell, etc., in the spaceport. And also we saw I don't know, there is a name for this class of droid, and I don't know what it is, but it's the same droid type as in Star Tours, the ride at Disney.
Yes.
Was the you know, droid on the Star Cruiser, which I thought was quite good. We see a Womp Rat. That's something that's mentioned in Star Wars quite often. But we actually saw that. The other thing, I made a note here. The booster pipe that the Jawas offered was the same piece of pipe that Han Solo was using to try and stop the trash compactor wars from closing in the. So they're throwing everything in there. You know?
Brilliant.
But there were a load of others, I'm sure. But this, as I said, I just do this bit for a little bit of fun, really. So, which is cool. But obviously, the bit that I always want to get into, and this is the important bit now, is really sort of what your thoughts were on this episode. You know, nitpicks, personal thoughts, all of that sort of thing. So, who wants to go first? I don't mind. One of you.
Paul?
Go on then, Paul.
Sure. Like personal feelings on the episode?
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it.
Okay.
Like really enjoyed it. I think it's a weird thing. I'm really enjoying the Boba Fett show, as we've all kind of talked about at the beginning. However, I didn't miss him in this episode.
Right.
I think it's interesting how this is kind of served, it seems, as a backdoor kind of first episode to Mandalorian season 3, which a lot of people seem to have complained about online. I like the confidence, the swaggering confidence in being able to go, yeah, well, actually, we're just going to do this episode, and we don't care what you think, because they don't care what you think ultimately. And we're just going to, well, they don't.
No, I like it.
They want your money, of course. Like any corporate, look, they care about the stories they're creating, and I do genuinely believe that.
Yeah,
I think they genuinely care about the stories they create. Even Rian Johnson cared about the film he was creating. You know, whether you like it or not. And I just admire the confidence to be able to go, yeah, well, we know that this show's called this, but it's actually going to be about this. And I'm beginning to wonder if, I mean, they probably won't, but I'm beginning to wonder if this is just going to be a single season show.
Right. Interesting.
That we are going to see the end of Boba Fett in this season. Like, right. I genuinely, I've just got this feeling that
because that was one of the questions I had for you guys. Is obviously this is called the Book of Boba Fett, and we've only got 2 chapters left. So I wondered whether there were going to be more volumes of the Book of Boba Fett, because
probably.
You know, okay, potentially there's another 2 hours of storytelling, depending on how long the episodes are going to be. But I feel like, you know, there's a lot still to tell. So, is there going to be more volumes? But interesting that you think it's going to be a one and done. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just positing the idea out there that they're going to kind of cap it off. I mean, I doubt it, because, you know, at the end of the day, everybody loves money, and if you're making money with something and you're getting subscribers and you're getting engagement, which is the other vitally important thing they're getting with this show, why would you stop?
I felt like what they showed that they could do with this episode is turn it into a completely different show. On, like, you know, at the drop of a hat. And I feel like this is them moving, you know, into, as you say, like, interconnectedness between, you know, even if they never do another Boba Fett series, have we seen the last of Boba Fett? Really doubt it. And if they do a Bo-Katan series, they could just bring him over, do a whole episode about Boba Fett on that series. You know, I feel like they are kind of finally finding their feet with doing an interconnected universe, Marvel style, but in their own way.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually, Liz, did you not feel that this was the moment when they kind of went, oh yeah, like, if it's good enough for Marvel, it's good enough for us, and we can use these shows as kind of, you know, 50% of the show is going to be moving forward for the show, but the other 50% is going to be about dropping in all these characters and
it's going to be about an overall story, like,
yeah.
you know, and I think that's what's really clever about it. And I think that's, you know, one of the things that I loved so much about this episode is, like you said, the confidence it had with just sweeping its, you know, its sort of A plot right off the board, its main character right off the board, and just taking it in a completely different direction with a character that we already know. And I feel like it was a bold statement they were making. And like you said, you know, okay, some people didn't like it. I loved it. I thought it was like such a brilliant move. Because it, you know, it sets a totally different tone. Like, you know, where you had Boba Fett appearing in The Mandalorian as a supporting character, you know, it was great that they brought him in that way. Now they've given him his own series, but they've also, you know, just made this statement here that actually this is not just his story that we're telling. We're telling an overall story. And yeah, you probably do need to watch these other shows. You know, and I really don't think you would need a second season of this, depending on how they end it. I mean, they might want to do one, but I don't think you need one. I think they could just, you know, keep building on other characters in the way that Marvel Phase 1 did. You know, they could have a Kasha series and a Bo-Katan series, and then eventually bring them all back together again. You know, and I think that's, you know, they kind of stumbled with the films a little bit in trying to figure out what they were going to do. But I feel like this longer format stuff is really allowing them to slowly build up this lore. And, you know, and slowly introduce characters, and then, you know, and then kind of pull back on some of them and then bring them forward again. And, you know, I just think it's super smart. So, yeah. And I felt like this episode, and maybe it was just me, but I felt like this episode really broke out all the stops. I feel like this was the big budget episode of the show.
Do you think so? Because apart from the opening stuff, it's actually only set in one location, really. Like,
I mean, for the most part, but you get them out in space. You get them, you know. I felt like, you know, and just actually many different settings, like, you know, in the first half of the show. I mean, I think the latter half was all kind of set on Tatooine, and you know, but comparing it to other episodes of Boba Fett, I felt like this one, you know, is kind of where they broke out most of the stops.
I mean, I don't know. You've had all that great train stuff and the speeder bikes, and I think that it's always been an expensive looking show.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that, but I'm saying that, you know, like, to my mind, this one, you know, sort of looked like, you know, where they kind of put a lot of budget.
Yeah. No, I find what you're saying interesting, because one of the things which we'll do at the end of this episode as well is one of the things we do is a sort of speculation section where we try and, you know, speculate what's coming. And obviously last week the speculation was, you know, of course, you know, they hinted heavily at the end of the previous episode that we were going to see Din Djarin, and, you know, we're going to have the Mandalorian. They even, you know, played the music cue, etc. But I have to say, I was very surprised with what we actually got, because I was not, you know, the way the show started, I thought, okay, they're going to introduce where the Mando's at nowadays and what he's doing. Yeah. And, you know, he's going to then get found and interact with them. But the fact that the episode went on and on and on and on, and we didn't get, you know, until the very end, Fennec Shand turning up, no Boba Fett at all. And I was kind of like, what are they playing at? Have they accidentally put on episode 1 of The Mandalorian season 3? Because this does not forward the story at all. You know,
I get the feeling that Tamura Morrison is a bit like Eastwood and Morgan Freeman, in the sense that they'll do everything they can to cut down the amount of screen time they have and cut down the amount of, like, I've heard a rumor, I don't know if this is true or if it's just kind of scuttlebutt to make it seem more kind of fun and rebellious and dangerous than it really is, that Morrison has whilst Favreau went on a break, he kind of started persuading the writers and the directors of the episodes to start cutting his dialogue.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, because I think a lot of those actors, like I remember hearing a story about Morgan Freeman on the set of Seven saying to David Fincher, like, you can cut this. I can just do that with a look, and I can just do this by just, whatever. Which is the sign of a very accomplished actor, I find.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you will actually ask a director to start cutting lines down, and obviously not saying anything about the amount of dialogue Keith has in any of his films, but I think there's I think there's interesting stuff in that, and I wonder if it's even got to the point where Tamira Morrison's kind of take me out of the whole episode. I'm fine. I'm still getting paid. I'm taking a day off.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because one of the things that I've heard. I mean, it sounds like you guys are quite enjoying this, and so am I for the most part. But I have had guests on, and I've heard other reviews, etc., where the audience has not been so happy with the show and has made I would say quite constructive criticisms about the show in places. And one of the things I hear a lot, and this is where we're sort of getting to, I always say it's sort of what our headcanon fills in many respects, is, as you rightly said, Liz, part of the appeal of Boba Fett from the movies was the fact that we knew very little about him, and he was, very mysterious and all of this sort of thing. And obviously now they're sort of breaking down and fleshing out the character. Obviously we had some backstory in the Clone Wars, but now we're seeing what was beyond the original trilogy. And some have said, it's not Boba Fett, it's not the same character, blah blah blah, he should be a badass bounty hunter. And I think the problem is, and I thought it while watching this show, is the Mandalorian represents what many people want from Boba Fett, I believe. He's a bounty hunter, he's got the shiny armor, he doesn't take the helmet off, he kicks ass most of the time. I know he got his ass kicked a little bit in this one, but in all of those, so he's got the gruff voice, and all of that sort of thing. And I just think that obviously they're trying to do something different with the Book of Boba Fett, but it's almost like the Mandalorian is the Boba Fett series that people seem to want. And it's interesting that we've had one whole episode now, one whole chapter of this devoted to the Mandalorian.
And to my mind, it was, the best episode of the series so far.
Yes.
And I was, as Paul said earlier, like, I didn't miss Boba Fett at all. Like, I was so swept up in it that, I couldn't have been happier. Not to say that I haven't been enjoying the show, because I have, but I agree with everything you just said, in that what people, seem to have always liked about Boba Fett and what they want from him is a lot of the things that, that they're doing with the Mandalorian. I don't know if they're trying, if it's an intentional sort of contrast that they're going with, that Boba Fett is what the Mandalorian could sort of be in the future, depending on what kind of path he picks. I mean, because now obviously Boba Fett, by coincidence, of winding up with the Tuskens, has sort of fundamentally changed, from being that ruthless bounty hunter. And so,
which on that point, actually, Liz, it's something I've been thinking about. This is almost this show kind of, because you're right, the thing that's fundamentally changed Boba Fett, it seems, as a character, was that story, that time that he spent with the Tusken Raiders, which we learned last week was some years, actually, but they only really spent about half an episode on it, or half a chapter, or two halves of chapters or whatever, over a couple of episodes on it, and that I think is kind of a bit of a missed opportunity, because there might have been a more interesting story there. What do you guys think? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, see, that could have been like, if this was Game of Thrones, that would have been a whole season, at least, of him spending that time there. I guess it really does depend on what they intend to do in terms of going forward with another season of it. If this is in fact the only series that they were planning on doing, maybe they did have to kind of get through that fairly quickly. If it was if they are planning on, sort of multiple seasons, I would agree that it's a bit of a missed opportunity. Because, as you say, it's like, it definitely didn't feel like years to me as a viewer. It felt like, a fairly brief, obviously significant period of time. But so that is a qualm that I would say I have with some of the things that have happened. And they obviously are trying to get from A to B plot wise, but there are things like that I felt like, I would have liked to see them take a little more time with.
Yeah. What about you, Paul? Have you got any sort of strong thoughts on that? In terms of what we've seen of Boba Fett's story so far on this. Do you think they should have told it linear? Do you think
I'm more than happy with the way they've told the story. For us, Keith, I think the important touchstone here is Westerns, right?
Yes.
Okay, which is, to my mind, the one true American genre. And I think arguably, possibly the most important film genre that America has ever created. And I think one of the important things about Westerns, and people always talk about revisionist Westerns, things like Unforgiven, is that American cinema was creating revisionist Westerns for quite a while, all the way back to the 50s, when you look at things, and the most probably quite an important film for this series and for the Mandalorian, in The Searchers.
Yes.
And I think that's what this is. This is their kind of pay-on, if you like, to The Searchers. So I think the kind of storyline of the gunfighter hanging up his guns, or the sort of
well, there's the Dances with Wolves parallel as well.
I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the Confederate soldier coming back after being on the losing side, I think there's loads of that packed in there.
Mm-hmm. Which would make sense, because Favreau, makes no secret about the fact that he's a fan of that genre, as he is also with Kurosawa films and whatever.
Yeah, and look, yeah. Star Wars has always been a Western, as well as taken from samurai films. At its heart, it's always been a Western, and I think that the strength of the modern Star Wars stuff, including things like Solo, which everyone else seemed to hate. I didn't. I really enjoyed it. Is its ability to take the tropes of a Western and adapt them for its own environment. And I think all of that stuff works really well. So the direction that they're taking the show in is no surprise to me. Also, what's interesting about a lot of those Westerns is that the hero kind of goes off effectively to die in a lot of cases. And I think that Boba as a character wants to die.
Okay.
He wants to do something good before he goes, but I think he knows that he's going for an ending. And the reason I say that is because you've got to look at the number of times he's killed himself in the show. Lest we forget the big sequence in The Mandalorian where he's killing stormtroopers left and right. And according to this modern Star Wars lore that we've got since the prequels, who are the stormtroopers? They're Boba Fett. So he's effectively killing himself over and over. And I think that there's an element of kind of self-hatred in it. And it's also interesting to see a character who wants to, as he said up in like the first or second episode, Jabba ruled with fear, I'm going to rule with respect. And I think there's something in that about being, people being freed from slavery, which was very much a theme of The Last Jedi. So it's interesting how they're taking those themes and running with them and making them better, I think, and making the point a lot better. Yeah. I've watched The Last Jedi again recently, and I still can't vibe with it at all.
No, I get it. Sorry, just a couple of comments.
Yeah, sorry,
I don't want to ignore the comments coming in.
No, please. Yeah.
Mr. Brown from the Mr. Brown Alliance has said evening or, and your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete has said, I've always considered the entire Star Wars franchise a space western. So backing up in
absolutely
entirely what you were saying there, Paul. So that's cool. No, I agree. I mean, I enjoyed this episode as an episode of The Mandalorian, which is what it was. What I'm puzzled about is, it did completely stop the story from forwarding, because even the end was somewhat ambiguous there, because on one hand, it's almost like, are they setting up season 3 of The Mandalorian? Because of course he said at the end that he wants to go and see a little friend, which is obviously Grogu. He's had this Beskar chainmail or whatever armor or whatever it is made for him, which is the little package he was carrying.
The little pouch that resembles Grogu with the little
ears sticking out. Yeah. So
love that.
Which is weird because we've got 2 chapters left. Right. This one was a longer one. Even weirdly, nothing much happened in this episode, but it was 50 minutes, which I think is the longest episode we've had so far this season. But is he going to go off and do that then, or is he actually going to do you think he's going to get sidetracked and join Boba for the next 2 episodes, or both? Yeah, okay. It's kind of
like because we're now in the arena of having your cake and eating it.
Yeah,
true. This is the modern.
We live in that world. Just a couple of things that came out of this as well that I wanted to mention earlier was because we didn't talk a lot about the dark saber actually, and I know I've not watched a lot of the animated shows, but the dark saber was set up in Rebels at one point, and I did see that, and they went back about this whole sort of almost like sort of King Arthur type legend, like Excalibur type legend around it, with a character called Tar Vizsla, who was related to the Favreau character in this episode. But again, the darksaber, I kind of like it because it's a little bit more like a broadsword than a lightsaber is, isn't it? And the fact, what did you make of all of this? Him not finding it heavy to wield and all of that sort of stuff, because we didn't really touch on that much.
I think I would agree that obviously they're kind of going with this Arthurian thing about kind of worthiness and what's inside you, sort of guiding how well you can wield it, because obviously he won it in battle, and he won it in battle again in this episode, but as the armor tells him, your mind is distracted, and until you can truly focus, you're going to have trouble wielding it. So I think that's going to be part of his journey, because it still didn't seem, even though he won it back, it didn't seem as though he had suddenly mastered it. I think, some of that is going to probably come to pass in the next few episodes, I would hope. And quite possibly that would have to do with being reunited with Grogu. because he is distracted by, that seems to be the primary thing he's distracted by.
Yeah. Also, can I say about that? So the sword gets heavier the more he swings it, basically.
Mm-hmm.
That says to me that the more you move along a course of death and violence,
mm-hmm.
the more you're going to get weighed down.
Yeah,
and therefore that's telling again, it's telling him as Boba Fett's moving away from violence, he's moving away from violence, and I think the idea is that the galaxy as a whole starts to move away from violence, but actually does it? Because one of the interesting things that I was thinking about this, in watching that scene where the rebel pilots kind of pull him over in space,
mm-hmm.
is that you have this system, of the Empire, basically, that's now been destroyed, or you're now in the last remnants of the Empire, but you're just replacing it with another bureaucracy, and where there's bureaucracy, there's money. Where there's money, there's going to be inequality, and there's going to be violence. And it's interesting. I think the more I think about it, if the rebels were real rebels, they would be moving towards some sort of non-monetized utopia, right?
Yeah, well,
but instead,
it's the New Republic now. Though,
yeah, they're pulling people over in space.
Yeah, yeah. It's the New Republic now, isn't it, guys? By the way, Mr. Brown has put here a massive Beskar spear forged into a small bag of rings.
Well, I wondered about that too. I mean, that was a big spear in a teeny little bag.
There was an interesting thing.
And sorry, not Brian Young has put lightsabers were originally supposed to be challenging to wield. That changed in the prequels. Yeah.
Okay. That's something I wasn't aware of. I've got to say, but I feel there's thematic stuff there, and there's a lot more thematic stuff as they move through. Sorry, like I get into quite weighty kind of thematic.
No. I get it, and I like this. This is why we ask you guys on. But one of the other things that I thought, in terms of a piece of dialogue, I thought was quite amusing, and I don't know whether it was a little sort of jab in some ways, but it obviously totally fitted the story as well. But there's obviously been this whole thing where Favreau and his team have tried to sort of bring stuff back into the Star Wars canon that got made legends when Disney took over. And I did kind of like the part when they're talking about the mythosaur, the symbol that the Mandalorians have on their armor, and that they used to ride and stuff. And they say something about, oh, that's just now been renegated to legends. And I thought that was quite funny because it totally worked in the story, but I also wondered whether it was kind of
probably a little like tongue-in-cheek, sort of in-joke.
But there is a history of the Mandalorian riding beasts. Boba Fett wants to ride the Rancor. The Mando rides those things in season 1. Doesn't he ride the crate dragon at one point?
He doesn't actually ride. No, he defeats the crate dragon, doesn't he? But I think
thought he kind of I could be wrong. Sorry, but there's a
it's all relevant.
Anyway, sorry, I mean, I don't know where it's going personally. But...
Okay, well, that leads us really nicely into the next part, actually, because one of the things we always talk about is never tell me the odds, or I've got a bad feeling about this, depending on what side of the fence that you sit. But the way this has ended really is like, okay, they could kind of go anywhere now. We could continue to follow Din Djarin. We could carry on with Boba Fett, but we've only got 2 chapters as far as we know, unless it gets left in a cliffhanger and there's volume 2 on the way or something. But I just wondered, have you guys got any sort of real speculation or theories as to what might happen in the next 2 chapters?
Depends on how much they want to stick with the Mandalorian as a character. I mean, are we going to see him go off to see Grogu off screen, or are we going to follow that journey with, you know, presumably Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, you know, sort of assisting him, or is he just going to kind of, you know, go off, do his thing with Grogu, and we'll sort of be back in the thick of what's been going on, you know, with Boba Fett. I think that this episode definitely, you know, if we are going to be seeing the Mandalorian, and I presume we are in the next 2 episodes, I do think that it was smart of them to just like completely take their time and catch you up with him. You know, because I think that, you know, as much as fans might be complaining about this episode as like a standalone, you know, all Mando all the time episode, they probably would have complained more if we weren't really caught up with him, if we only, you know, if we didn't really get the full story of what he's been doing in the time since we saw him last. So you know, I do speculate we're gonna have him you know, helping them you know, for these last 2 episodes of the season. And what about you, Paul? What are your speculations?
I think we're going to get, you know, obviously Boba Fett back for the last 2 episodes. Definitely, and I think it's going to be. I think that there possibly is going to be kind of all-out war on Tatooine with the other criminal families, and the Hutts, the twins. I think they're going to step in.
Do you?
Yeah.
I thought, because I have felt like we probably had seen the last of them because they just sort of ran off.
They're kind of biding their time and they're going to take. I think it's going to be like gang war for the last couple of episodes.
What about the Pike Syndicate though, which is still?
Well, yeah, like I think they're both going to step in and try and take Tatooine, and you know, there's going to be some interesting stuff there. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. At some point, right, we've got to hit in all these shows, not the Obi-Wan prequel, obviously, or the Obi-Wan show, but at some point we've got to start getting the rise of the First Order somewhere. I don't know if this is the show that's really going to happen in. I think that's probably going to happen in the Ahsoka.
Ahsoka, yeah.
Ahsoka, thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
That's going to happen in that show. But I think that we might see some of the other returning bounty hunters. So a lot of these guys, these other bounty hunters you got pictured there,
yes,
they've kind of appeared in the comics quite a bit.
Yes,
recently.
I knew you'd know this.
Well, I'll admit I haven't been reading them, but I'm just vaguely aware that they've been appearing, and they've had a thing which kind of is the story of people trying to get Han Solo, basically. The bounty hunters trying to get Han Solo, and I think that's been called War of the Bounty Hunters. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's some reference to that, and that is set between. I don't know if it's Star Wars and Empire or Empire and Jedi, but that's been going on. So perhaps one of your viewers who's reading the comics can pipe up and let us know.
Yeah,
but that's been incredibly popular,
right?
And there's going to be more of that, you know.
Okay, I was going to say the bounty hunter slides or pictures on that slide there were actually speculation from last week, because it was like, oh, will we get, you know, maybe you know, some of the other bounty hunters, Dengar or whatever, show up. But on the top there, because it can kind of go anywhere now. So obviously, you know, are we the last thing we knew about Grogu is that he was with Luke Skywalker, right?
Yeah. So
does that mean, particularly as that actor's been appearing in this episode as a rebel pilot, or a New Republic pilot, you know, are we going to get more Luke Skywalker? Are we going to get Ahsoka show up in this?
Are we going to get Vader?
Well, yeah, and also obviously I've got a little picture there of the animated from Rebels, Sabine. And the reason I've put her up is the whole dark saber legend thing, particularly with the training and whatever they had in this episode, completely links back to an episode of Rebels where she's learning to use the dark saber, and it's almost like they did the live action equivalent in this episode. You've got
I'm hoping
shields and everything that the Mandalorians have, which you see a lot on animation, but we've got it live action on this. So yeah. Sorry, Paul, what were you saying?
Do you know I'm hoping? Sorry, I interrupted you actually, Keith. I do apologise. Do you know I'm hoping we do get, since we've had Black Chrysanthemum, I'm hoping we get Aphra.
Dr. Aphra,
like I'm really hoping we get Dr. Aphra.
Right. This is a comics thing, right? Because I'm not very familiar with this. Is this the? I read a little bit. This is kind of like the female Indiana Jones of the Star Wars universe. Is that right?
She is a sort of mercenary archaeologist who comes from I believe they're like a very rich family, but she's kind of abandoned all that to become this sort of ne'er-do-well, and she teams up with a homicidal pair of droids who are complete bastards and like really are bastards. And she's worked for Darth Vader before, so I think we're probably I really hope that I don't know how they're going to do it, but I'm really crossing fingers. And
it was part of our speculation on an earlier episode, actually.
Right.
And also, mine's completely blanked again. Carry on. Sorry, I will remember it.
Well, I mean, just because they managed
Kira. Sorry, Kira.
Yes, no, she would be great.
Yeah.
Although, when would she have done it? Because isn't she busy filming? I mean, I guess they would have shot this months ago. But that would be cool. Maybe Darth Maul then.
Well, no, Darth Maul is dead by now, right? Because Maul...
is he? Do we know that?
Well, he died.
Know that
in Rebels at the hands of Obi-Wan.
Okay. Thank you.
Like literally, just before A New Hope, it was set like
right. Thank you.
Before New Hope. Sorry, that's a spoiler. I'm guessing anyone who's watching this. Sorry, we're spoiling other areas of Star Wars as well. But yeah, I mean, I'm assuming Rebels is considered hard canon. Because
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think all of that stuff is kind of canon, really.
But they brought him back once before. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, they find a way.
Because I was pretty certain he was dead after Phantom Menace, to be perfectly honest. But
I mean, like they waste nothing, really. Everything's there to be cannibalized and reused, and
they are tending. I noticed in this episode as well. Obviously, because of the age that Favreau and Filoni are, they're very much fans of the original trilogy, and there's been lots of Easter eggs to that. But this episode more than any has completely acknowledged the prequels. Right down to the fact that his new ship is the same ship that Anakin flew in Phantom Menace, right?
How is he going to fit
Bounty in there?
Yeah. In that.
Yeah, I did think the same thing. I think they're going to go in the droid slot or something.
It won't be like the first episode where he's got all those bounties lined up.
I know.
I did think
the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as you could see, because you sort of did mention, that he was still out being a bounty hunter in the beginning of the episode, but every time he's been given an opportunity to be paid, he has refused. Like, he's actually not really interested in being a bounty hunter, it would seem. What he actually wanted was to be reunited with the other Mandalorians and to eventually find Grogu. So is he even interested in being a bounty hunter anymore? or has has he set off on another path?
That's interesting. Yeah.
I did like the fact that they did the very similar opening to the original pilot of The Mandalorian, where he says about, warm or cold, either way, you're coming with me. I thought that was quite
cool.
In the meat factory, I expected to see a young Rocky Balboa punching some carcass in the corner,
That was such a cool opening sequence. I loved it, when you see his silhouette through the, those kind of sheer curtains.
What really made me laugh about that episode is when he brings up the hologram of the guy he's there to catch. It's just like they all look the same.
Yeah.
Wow.
Racist.
Could be. Oh, shut up! It could be any of them.
I thought it. He was distinctive enough.
Yeah, the jewelry and everything, didn't he? Right. All right, guys. Well, listen. I obviously want to give you the opportunity to, say everything you want to say about the show. So any kind of, we've gone more than an hour. So any kind of closing thoughts or comments from you guys about the Mandalorian? About the Book of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian. Liz, we'll start with you.
Well, okay. I do have to say, after watching this week's episode, it made me realize how excited I am for another season of The Mandalorian. As much as I've been enjoying Boba Fett, I feel like, this sort of change of gears made me realize okay, well, I've enjoyed this show a lot, but I'm really excited for this other show. I have good things to say about Boba Fett, but I think, I think that, this has just kind of really made me realize how jazzed I am to see this character again and find out what's been going on with him and what's going to happen when we finally get that show back.
This is the way. Yeah,
this is the way.
And I think we'll get that show back in probably like April, right? Because
not too sure.
Well, they kind of they never have Marvel and Star Wars running at the same time, so this ends, and then we get Moon Knight, and then I think come April will be. I mean, I've got to say, I really admire Disney's kind of commercial and cultural imperialism. It's incredible.
Oh yeah.
Like you cannot go.
Keep you subscribed to the service. Don't
they make it well worth the subscription. I mean,
sorry, we this ends, and then between this and Moon Knight, we get Pam and Tommy.
Which I can't wait.
the other show I'm really keen to watch.
I can't wait.
And Liz can roll her eyes, but
Lily James.
I mean, it's got Bucky in it, so
yeah. There you go. You can roll your eyes all you like, but I know exactly what you're watching the show for, Liz.
Yep.
Hey, it's appealing to
exactly. They're very well rounded.
I don't know what you're talking about. I just like good drama.
Indeed.
Yeah, really highbrow.
Indeed. Well, listen, on that note, Paul, I've put some details here. Hopefully they're right, in case anyone wants to use the com link.
Although I do have to say, From Panels to Pictures as a show is done. That won't be coming back.
Oh crap!
That's all right. Don't worry. We haven't. So can I just say, Keith, if it's okay to sort of piggyback on your show here? Next week, our first comic show is back.
Of 2022.
Of 2022. Yeah, we've taken a big break between Christmas and so we've been off the air since like the 23rd of December. That was our last show, and we're coming back I think 4th of February or 5th of February, which 4th, yeah. So next Friday we're coming back with the first episode of Crushing Comics, so it'll be season 2 starting with a slightly sort of tweaked format and stuff. And then from there is a whole bunch of stuff that I'm going to be announcing in the next few weeks. So I hope people will stick with that. Yeah. So unfortunately, From Panels to Pictures is gone.
All right.
All the episodes are still there.
The comiccrush.com is correct. And at
the comiccrush.com is still going. And I would love anyone and everyone to go and take a look and please give us a kind of look at the stuff we do. We've got a shop, we've got articles, podcasts, videos. There's a lot of content on there. I'm making it as fast as I can. As fast as I can read the comics, I'm making the content. But Liz and I are coming back, and then hopefully from there, myself and Nikki will be doing a few shows. I've got some other new sort of co-hosts joining us as well for a couple of bits, and hopefully Keith, you and I will be back doing some stuff.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. Absolutely. So I will put links to all of this stuff down in the show notes as well. But I just wanted you to. So it is the comiccrush.com, and it's at the Comic Crush. Is that correct?
For the socials, yeah.
Okay. And then Liz, I don't know. Sorry, my intro to you was a little bit sort of vague. You know, I know you work with Paul. You're very entertaining when I listen to you guys on live streams and podcasts. But where can people? I know you've got your own website, which is lizcjordan.com. But can you tell us a bit about what you're working on and stuff at the moment?
My website is really kind of just it's a home for kind of anything I've written or anything that I feel like writing. Usually it's comics reviews, things like that. And also where I post links to the podcasts that Paul and I do together. So we like to review comics based film and TV series together. We've been doing that together for years. So that's really kind of my jam, my sort of passion is talking about those things, comics and the kind of films that are inspired by them. You can also find me, I use Twitter, not a whole lot, but I do use Twitter. And I'm very, very happy to chat to anybody about any of those interests. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Liz C. Jordan. If you all my social media is at Liz C. Jordan. And you can also kind of find me, on the Comic Crush website in the things that Paul and I do together.
There you go.
I got to say, if
a picture of you there in your happy place, Liz.
That is surrounded by comics, exactly.
Can I just say, if you get a chance to check out Liz's writing on comics, then you won't be sorry, because like her stuff is really good. It's really, she does really great capsule reviews, and I think what people should really check out her she's got a few long form film reviews up on her site for a lot of comic book movie stuff, and those are really great.
Thank you.
Cool. Like that's well worth digging into. And like all of us, we all have trouble keeping up and getting the content out there, but the stuff that's up there is really good. And like I will say, do check out her site. Yeah.
There we go. A glowing endorsement, Liz. How about that?
Well, flattering. Paul's being so nice to me.
Exactly.
Glowing. It's practically radioactive.
What's going on? Obviously, if you want to use the com link and contact the show here, we can be found. There's an email address. It's lswotcast@gmail.com. So that's basically acronym for Let's See What's Out There, cast@gmail.com. You can find us at LSWOTcast, and also this channel that you're on now, Home Media Minefield, at Home Media Minefield. Please check out some of the other content that we've got here. We have covered other shows as well. We've covered some of the Marvel shows. We've covered some of the Star Trek shows, and we've covered various movies, basically anything to do with film, television, or related entertainment is the place to find it on here on Home Media Minefield. I also have another YouTube channel called British Isles, which is EYLES, as in my last name, and I've got some films that I've made there. So there's an anthology series called The Urban Chiller Tales, which are a series of short films, and I'm also working on a feature at the moment called Car Cam, which, as the name suggests, takes place entirely from a dash cam in a car. So more on that to come. That'll be this year for sure. And recent stuff and coming soon on the channel. Had a live stream last week that's available as a video now, remembering to scream. It was our first live scream, and we looked at the Scream franchise, and I had Turtle Canyon Films and Movie Timelines joining me on that one for a discussion of the Scream franchise. It was non-spoilery for the latest film that's in theaters at the moment. And coming up next week on Home Media Minefield, I will be doing a full review. It's a little bit late because this has been out about a month now on Home Media, but I will be looking at the 4K UHD and Blu-ray of No Time to Die. Obviously, the latest James Bond installment. So I'll be looking at the picture and audio quality and the bonus special features. And I will also link there a playlist to other Bond related material, including a live stream or a video stream with Paul, where we talked about our thoughts.
Well, when you say talked about, well, we banged on for 90 minutes, Keith. I think
I'm very good at that.
which is where I instigated the rule that if we ever do another podcast on my channel that looks like it's going to go over an hour, we've got to split it into 2 parts.
There you go. Well, we've certainly gone over an hour. We're at 1 hour 22 here, but it has come to an end. Listen, I just want to end by saying thank you, anyone who's watched this. As I said, if you find this, please check out some of the other work. Consider subscribing, hit the like button, hit the bell icon for more content. And I really want to say a thank you to Paul and Liz, both of you, for joining me today. Please go and check out their work. They've done some fabulous stuff. So
thank you, Keith.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us on.
No worries. And we will see you at the next Home Media Minefield presents Let's See What's Out There. Bye for now.